So Promise 2 of Project 2025 is about dismantling the administrative state, which is poignant today because Trump appointed Tom Homan to be his border czar, and Tom Homan said this.
Says it would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is that worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
And he appointed Timu Yosef Goebbels to be his deputy chief of staff, Stephen Miller, and he said this about migrants at a rally in Aurora about a month ago.
These photos around me, are these the kids you grew up with? Are these the neighbors you were raised with? Are these the neighbors that you want in your city? No. These are the criminal migrants that Kamala Harris brought into your community. And as swiftly as they came, Donald Trump will send...
Cut off there at the end, but send them back, was what he was going to say. Because they want to send all the migrants back. So again, just really great job, everybody. Y'all leftists called us neocons and neo-libs because we didn't want this. And, well, you won. You did it. And now we get neo-Nazis in charge. So good job. Give yourselves a round of applause. You've earned it. You deserve it. Seriously. You kept that moral high ground, and, you know, you're just better than me. That's all there is to it. You're just better than all of us. And you feeling morally superior while completely abdicating any responsibility for your role in this is really what's important right now. So thank you for showing us how amazing and special you are. Anyway, let's see how these fascists plan to destroy this pesky little thing called checks and balances so that they can destroy the Constitution and deport everyone. Promise 2. Dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Of course, the surest way to put the federal government back to work for the American people is to reduce its size and scope back to something resembling the original constitutional intent. Conservatives desire a smaller government, not for its own sake, but for the sake of human flourishing. But the Washington establishment doesn't want a constitutionally limited government because it means they lose power and are held more accountable by the people who put them in power. Like restoring popular sovereignty, the task of reattaching the federal government's constitutional and democratic tethers calls to mind Ronald Reagan's observation that there are no easy answers, but there are simple answers. Ronald Reagan was an actor. Like, I don't know why everybody has this weird memory that he's like a really smart guy, because he's not. In the case of making the government smaller, more effective, and accountable, the simple answer is the Constitution itself. The surest proof of this is how strenuously and creatively generations of progressives and many Republican insiders have worked to cut themselves free from the strictures of the 1789 Constitution and subsequent amendment. Consider the federal budget. Under current law, Congress is required to pass a budget and 12 issue-specific spending bills comporting with it every single year. The last time Congress did so was in 1996. Congress no longer meaningfully budgets, authorizes, or categorizes spending. Instead, party leaders negotiate one multi-trillion-dollar spending bill several thousand pages long and then vote on it before anyone, literally anyone, has had a chance to read it. No, Republicans, you're just dumb and you don't know how to read or delegate tasks. Debate time is restricted, amendments are prohibited, and all of this is backed up against a midnight deadline when the previous omnibus spending bill will run out and the federal government shuts down. This process is not designed to empower 330 million American citizens and their elected representatives, but rather to empower the party elites secretly negotiating without any public scrutiny or oversight. It's ridiculous because when Democrats had the trifecta, when they had the House, the Senate, and the White House, they were able to pass omnibus bills while also passing a bunch of other legislation that did help people. But then when the Republicans took over in 2022, they could barely pass the omnibus bill. That's like the main part of their job, and they're so incompetent they could barely do that. So there were threats of government shutdowns every few months. And despite its gaudy price tag, the federal budget is not even close to the worst example of this corruption. That distinction belongs to the administrative state, the dismantling of which must be a top priority for the next conservative president. The term administrative state refers to the policy-making work done by the bureaucracies of all the federal government's departments, agencies, and millions of employees. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. That is, federal law is enacted only by elected legislators in both houses of Congress. It's dripping with hypocrisy. Like, these people want only elected officials to be making the laws and not the administrative state. And meanwhile, none of the authors of Project 2025 are elected officials, yet they want to make a bunch of laws undermining the elected officials. Like, it makes no sense. This exclusive authority was part of the framers' doctrine of separated powers. They not only split the federal government's legislative, executive, and judicial powers into different branches, they also gave each branch checks over the others. Under our Constitution, the legislative branch, Congress, is far and away the most powerful and correspondingly the most accountable to the people. In recent decades, members of the House and Senate discovered that if they give away that power to the Article 2 branch of government, they can also deny responsibility for its actions. So today, in Washington, most policy is no longer set by Congress at all, but by the administrative state. Given the choice between being powerful but vulnerable or irrelevant but famous, most members of Congress have chosen the latter. Congress passes intentionally vague laws that delegate decision-making over a given issue to a federal agency. That agency's bureaucrats, not just unelected but seemingly unfireable, then leap at the chance to fill the vacuum created by Congress's preening cowardice. The federal government is growing larger and less constitutionally accountable, even to the president, every year. Now they have a bulleted list of all the things they hate. A combination of elected and unelected bureaucrats at the Environmental Protection Agency quietly strangles domestic energy production through difficult-to-understand rulemaking processes. They want to gut the EPA. Those are regulations that keep us safe. And despite the fact that, yeah, maybe they don't do enough, they're actually trying to curb climate change. Not anymore. Bureaucrats at the Department of Homeland Security, following the lead of a feckless administration, order border and immigration enforcement agencies to help migrants criminally enter our country with impunity. They don't want a pathway to citizenship. They don't want to make it easier to become a citizen. They want a white-only ethno-state. Like, I don't know how to be more clear about that. Bureaucrats at the Department of Justice force school districts to undermine girls' sports and parents' right to satisfy transgender extremists. They genuinely think that transgender people existing is because of the federal government, because of the wokeness of Joe Biden. Like, that is what they believe, or at least what they're trying to get people to believe. Woke bureaucrats at the Pentagon force troops to attend training seminars about white privilege, and bureaucrats at the State Department infuse U.S. foreign aid programs with woke extremism about intersectionality and abortion. Do I even need to explain what this means, people? Maybe I do, because people don't seem to get it. Under the first Trump administration in the DOJ, they explicitly went after Antifa. They gutted any funding or work that was going towards researching white supremacist gangs. They said that that was woke, and they just wanted to go after Antifa. So essentially this is the same thing. Under Biden, the military started to have more training. They started to have sensitivity trainings, for lack of a better term, so people could understand white privilege and understand oppression and where they fit in and all of that. And this work is important because hate crimes exist. Radicalization in the military definitely exists. And this isn't a video on understanding white privilege, but if you want, I'm happy to give book recommendations, documentaries, any information you could want. I could help you out on that one. But essentially what this means is that they want it to be okay for racism, sexism, sexual assault to run rampant in the military. They are not interested in fixing that problem. Oh, and they want to cut all U.S. foreign aid all over the world that provides abortion care to people in need everywhere. Unaccountable federal spending is the secret lifeblood of the Great Awakening, the cult we're all a part of. Nearly every power center held by the left is funded or supported one way or another through the bureaucracy of Congress. Colleges and school districts are funded by tax dollars. The administrative state holds 100% of its power at the sufferance of Congress, and its insulation from presidential discipline is an unconstitutional fairy tale spun by the Washington establishment to protect its turf. Members of Congress shield themselves from constitutional accountability, often when the White House allows them to get away with it. Cultural institutions like public libraries and public health agencies are only as independent from public accountability as elected officials and voters permit. The right, MAGA, all of that, have spent the majority of the last decade attacking public libraries for being peddlers of pornography, and attacking public health institutions for whatever crazy conspiracy during the pandemic. So I'm not really convinced that they have any vested interest in protecting those cultural institutions. Let's be clear. The most egregious regulations promulgated by the current administration come from one place, the Oval Office. Current administration being the Biden administration. The president cannot hide behind the agencies, as his many executive orders make clear. His is the responsibility for the regulations that threaten American communities, schools, and families. Hilarious, because Trump signed 220 executive orders, which apparently is more than any other president since Jimmy Carter, while Biden is at 139 so far. This was in June, I believe. And most of Biden's executive orders were in response to the COVID pandemic. So the conservative president must move swiftly to do away with these vast abuses of power and remove the career and political bureaucrats who fueled it. This is the plan, to cut like 40,000 nonpartisan career employees of the government, people in NASA, people in the FDA, people at the Department of Education, everywhere. Everybody's getting fired. Properly considered, restoring fiscal limits and constitutional accountability to the federal government is a continuation of restoring national sovereignty to the American people. In foreign affairs, global strategy, federal budgeting, and policymaking, the same pattern emerges again and again. Ruling elites slash and tear at restrictions and accountabilities placed on them. They centralize power up and away from the American people, to supranational treaties and organizations, to left-wing experts, to sight unseen all-or-nothing legislation, to the unelected career bureaucrats of the administrative state. They're not elected because their jobs aren't political. They're experts who are good at their jobs. Like, you don't elect your doctor. As monolithic as the left's institutional power appears to be. Monolithic? You guys are the Heritage Foundation. The fuck are you talking about? It originates with appropriations from Congress and is made complete by a feckless president. A conservative president must look to the legislative branch for decisive action. The administrative state is not going anywhere until Congress acts to retrieve its own power from bureaucrats and the White House. But in the meantime, there are many executive tools a courageous conservative president can use to handcuff the bureaucracy. So if we can't outlaw the use of executive orders, let's use a bunch of them to destroy Earth. Push Congress to return to its constitutional responsibility, restore power over Washington to the American people, bring the administrative state to heel, and in the process defang and defund the woke culture warriors who have infiltrated every last institution in America. You hear that, leftists and all my woke friends out there? They think you are the actual deep state. You are the conspiracy. You are the thing holding all of this capitalistic bullshit together. Isn't that funny? The conservative promise lays out how to use many of these tools, including how to fire supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats, how to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaus and offices, how to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government, how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state, and how to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. Finally, the president can restore public confidence and accountability to our most important government function of all, national defense. The American people desire a military full of highly skilled servicemen and women who can protect the homeland and our interests overseas. The next conservative president must end the left's social experimentation with the military, restore war fighting as its sole mission, and set defeating the threat of the Chinese Communist Party as its highest priority. So you hear that? No more funding for education or the environment or transportation. It's all going to go to the military now. The next conservative president must possess the courage to relentlessly put the interests of the everyday American over the desires of the ruling elite. Their outrage cannot be prevented. It must simply be ignored, and it can be. The left derives its power from the institutions they control, but those institutions are only powerful to the extent that constitutional officers surrender their own legitimate authority to them. A president who refuses to do so and uses his or her office to reimpose constitutional authority over federal policymaking can begin to correct decades of corruption and remove thousands of bureaucrats from the positions of public trust they have so long abused. I mean, that's basically it. They don't care. They do not care about the rules. They do not care about the laws. They do not care about the guardrails. They are going to destroy our Constitution, and you're going to fucking like it.